Moral Side of the News, our weekly discussion of today's top stories from a moral, ethical, and religious point of view. I'm Sean Kalin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and I'm joined today, as always, by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders. Reverend Dr. George Wasson, Faith Point Church; Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church; Reverend Sally McLean, Christian Church Disciples of Christ; Reverend Jason Crosby, Center College; and Rabbi Emerita Galia R. Rooks with the Temple. We begin this week with the recent protest entering a Minnesota church.
The Justice Department says it's investigating after video posted online by Black Lives Matter shows protesters entering that church in St. Paul, where they say one of the pastors is a local ICE official. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says the protest interrupting a church service is a potential violation of the FACE Act.
The FACE Act was passed to stop this exact type of conduct. You are not allowed to stop people from worshiping, and you're not allowed to intimidate or impede them. And so the individuals that went in there and did that, and you could tell that they had a plan, you could tell that they had an agenda, and you cannot do that in this country.
So panel, this happened a couple of weeks ago. We've been off a couple of weeks with Moral Side of the News, so thought it relevant to talk about it today. We haven't had a chance to talk about it. My question to you, is there ever a moral justification for disrupting a service, a worship service, to make a political or moral statement? Or should sacred places always be off limits?
It happened in 1989, St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, when they protested about the use of condoms with the AIDS epidemic. And there were arrests made, but apparently nothing came of it of any significance. There were like 45, according to the information I read, 4,500 people outside the church. And of course, they were looking at an epidemic and how to get a point across to make a statement that people would recognize what's going on in their community. So yes, I think there is a time when it is appropriate to draw attention to a particular justice issue that needs to be made known.
So I would fall on the other side of that spectrum because as a pastor, I'm a shepherd. It's my job to take care of the people within my congregation. It is a sacred space. It is a place where people can come to worship. It's not a place to have antagonists or instigators come in for me. I'm very protective towards my congregation, and my congregation is very protective towards itself. I think there's a time and a place for protesting. I think there is an appropriateness for people to be able to share what they think or believe, but not in my sacred space, not in the space where our people have gathered. They can go outside, they can talk to you outside, what have you, but there were children, there were elderly, there were people there who were truly frightened at what was going on. And so I would say, no, it is a sacred space.
ICE can come into your sacred space. ICE is allowed into your sacred space. So how do you make the distinction between, and that's an interruption of worship as well. So, okay, I just don't get how one thing can happen and not the other.
My feelings about it are mixed, and that is that I think what people are doing inside of a church, a worship space, a synagogue, is something that transcends normal human behavior. What's going on there is something that we're about when we're in worshiping, that it goes beyond our human differences, but the differences are real. And so a protest outside of, say, St. Patrick's Cathedral is appropriate. I think the arrest of a journalist is what happened this time is inappropriate because, I mean, I think he was exercising his First Amendment rights and rights due to the Constitution for the protection of speech and journalism. I think that freedom of the press. And I don't think that ICE has a right, again, for that sense of transcendence, I don't think ICE has a right to come into a church service and to disrupt it because something greater is going on. And that greaterness, even if a constitution, a secular society would not recognize that greatness, the Constitution gives some recognition for freedom of religion, that we're allowed to practice. And so, and I think that practice needs some protection in that way. So my feelings are a little bit mixed around this situation.
I think that the term sanctuary can be used very literally here. It wasn't just people meeting in church, it was during an actual service. And so to me, that means that, first of all, ICE should never be allowed in to a sanctuary, especially when there's a religious service going on. And I agree with you, it's sacred space. It's not the time for politics, it's not the time for demonstrations or protests, but during the service. But afterwards and outside, I think it's absolutely the time and the place. And to get to that was to your point, George. To get to your point, I think that arresting a journalist, he didn't organize that protest. He was there reporting on it. That's what he's supposed to do. And I think that he absolutely, we're a few days past that, or a few weeks past that, but I don't think anything has been decided. But he's gotten entrapped in this whole situation. I think there were a couple of other journalists. I don't know why people aren't talking about them as well.
They did. The woman they're talking about, I can't remember her name.
Right.
Well, there were 9 of them, I think, in total. But what
He's
made
black.
What made him different, I think, is one of the cuts that I saw was that before they even got to the church, there was a comment that he made in there about them going to a church. And so there's something about the appropriateness of our journalists being able to say, wait, we're going where? No, we're not going into a place of worship. We're not going into a sanctuary. So if he knew in advance, which it looks like on the video, he did know, then there's a whole new degree of inappropriateness there as well, right?
I don't know what he knew, but I do know that the protest was organized. And so to report on the protest, which is already disrupting services, he was not there to disrupt services. I don't think any of the journalists were there to interfere or oppress or prevent anyone's sacred worship experience. And I'm sure they would have been just fine sitting there through the whole service if nothing had happened. But because there was advance notice that this was going to happen, then I do think it's appropriate for journalists to have been there. Especially because you don't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I appreciate our conversation because it's complicated. There are a number of different layers interacting here. There's freedom of the press and the press's ability to cover an event, regardless as to where it's happening, and the merit and value of that, its protection under the Constitution. So there's that issue. There's the issue that we've talked about regarding the freedom of religious expression, another constitutionally enshrined right that I think I'm hearing each of us in some degree say deserves protection as well. I think one other layer of complication that comes into this that I think as religious professionals and in our vocation we also have to acknowledge and recognize is that one of the pastors of the church was an ICE agent. And that's another layer of complication that I think has to be brought into this equation. Does that justify disrupting a religious service, a sanctuary? No. But is that another moral, ethical, legal issue that I think, in particular, people of faith have to keep in mind? Where does your day job end and your religious vocation begin? And in this particular moment, with the way that the heat has been turned up, I think it's a real challenge for someone to try to wear those two hats simultaneously. That's just another layer of complication.
It's a big confusion.
Yes.
One of the things I thought that was so distressing is he offered to turn himself in, Don Lemon. But instead, they went to his home with multiple guns and people, ICE agents, and to take him to wherever they took him. It was the same with the female journalist. They did the same with her children outside at the door, carrying them off as if they are, radical, a threat to society. So I think that was just not necessary.
Well, I think to think about what you were talking about, Jason, the many layers, I would say yes, absolutely. I agree. There are many layers, and how it was treated afterward. Of course, that's another conversation.
Sure.
You know, how the press is treated afterwards. But if we're going to really address this from a moral, ethical, religious perspective, all of us who are shepherds of the congregations to which we have been established or appointed to, or however our judicatory system sets us, is that we are the caretakers of those people. And what was happening in the midst of that particular time was worship. It wasn't organization to do a walk. It wasn't any kind of other special event. It was worship. And I think the conversation can get very muddied when we start talking about, well, what about the ice? What about this? What about this? Okay, that obviously would be a conversation, but if we stick to the conversation at hand, I would hope that we would all agree that in the context of our religious expression, of our worship time in our place of worship, no, you don't get to do that. You don't have unhindered freedom of press or freedom of speech. It is not unhindered. There are places that you just can't do that. And as a pastor, I'm going to tell you, antagonists and things like that that would attempt to come into our worship service, it's going to be a problem.
Okay.
And I don't want you there.
The use of the word antagonist concerns me.
Yeah.
I don't think the reporters were there as antagonists. I'm not even sure 100% who can be labeled antagonist. Is a protester protesting what ICE is doing an antagonist? I would say they're a defender.
Right, but looking at how he
certainly
questioned.
not the question of Don Lemon and the other reporters. I am totally opposed to calling them antagonists. I think that they were doing what journalists are required to do, which is report on these really difficult issues that our country is facing now.
And George, I think I think you're right about the sanctity of that time and space in particular. I think the question I was trying to get at was, at what point does an individual have a responsibility not to be a leader over that that sacred time and space if you are engaged as an agent of the state, arresting people without warrants? That also is a personal responsibility of a person in a position of ethical leadership in a religious context. If you're going to oversee a religious community where you have a designated sacred time and space set apart, that might limit and hinder then your other activity beyond that realm.
Oh, I would absolutely
and
agree
while
with that.
I defend the ability to have that sacred time and space, I would also call into question the individual decision by that religious leader to then also wear the ICE hat. That is what I think is also kind of an underlying component of the confusion in this particular moment.
There's a lot of confounding factors here, including, I can't remember who said, I think maybe you said it, the arresting someone in front of the children and the taking people away and stuff. And that's exactly, on the good days, what ICE is doing. So.
Well, again, and just to underscore one more time, that I want to try to make sure that we hold to is, if we're looking at this particular story of this particular event, and we're looking at it from a perspective of, should they have a right to come in and to disrupt the worship sacred time of what was going on in there?
They meaning the protesters, or they meaning the journalists?
Anybody. That nobody should be able to come into our sacred spaces to disrupt what is happening in the context of worship. At least that's my feeling as a pastor.
You know what? I agree with that.
What I really want.
It is illegal to do that.
And I think that's a good law. I agree with it completely. I'm the one who said, it's a sanctuary, and that's not. But if you know that something's going down at the worship service, and you go, and we don't know, but how do you say that in English? Kol adam b'chezkat kashrut. Every person with the presumption of righteousness. Mm-hmm. And I presume that the reporters would sit there in services and not disrupt anything. And then if something, but they were there because they knew something was going to happen, and they wanted to be able to report on what really happened there. So I would like to believe that they would have been totally non-disruptive. And the disruption came because of the protesters, not because of the reporters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the
Except
reporters didn't
But don't you
start.
think it got perpetuated because, again, the reports are looking at how he interviewed people, and he's in the, like, the saga is continuing.
It is, but it was already disrupted. I mean, the
Right, but that still
reporters
doesn't mean
aren't
it's
the
okay,
one.
right?
The reporters aren't the one who disrupted it.
So if people are going to come into your sanctuary, ICE is going to come into your sanctuary and take away your people, how are you going to protect them then?
Okay, again, I'm not sure how I would address that issue, but I would like to think that I'm being consistent to say, if it is a public worship service where people are in there with the specific task of worship, that's different than any other activity that might go on in the life of the church, synagogue, what have you. But in the context of a worship service, it's sacred space for me. Nobody gets in to disrupt that way. It's about what we're doing in worshiping God, not about all this other stuff. And I don't want to get it muddied in.
And I agree. And as long as that's what is happening, then a reporter has no right to be at all. No one, not just a reporter, no one has the legal right or the moral and ethical consciousness to actually do that. But once it happens, I mean, if I were worshiping in that situation and something started flaring up, I would probably start videoing it on my phone in case, God forbid, something tragic happened, so that there'd be another perspective as a witness. And that's what reporters do.
He went with them. They went with them. They were in the same vehicles. It wasn't just that the reporters were there because, hey, we're all worshiping God together in this place.
They were there because they knew something was going to happen.
They actually went with them. Lemon was in the car or the truck or the van with them to do this. And so I think it's a very different perspective.
If no one had stood up and said anything or made any kind of a scene, I just absolutely can't fathom that any of the journalists, much less Don Lemon, would have.
And I was just going to. I don't think the reporters were in the church before it started. They entered the church with the protesters.
Right, with the protesters.
Well, and let's not kid ourselves. I mean, Don Lemon is not just any reporter. If it would have been a reporter with the WHAS of Minneapolis,
WCCO.
WCCO. Thank you very much. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Perhaps nationally, there would be some conversation about what happened in the moment of worship. But because this is not an isolated event where this administration has in particular targeted that individual and the organization that formerly employed him. And now what's happening, and this is really dangerous, and perhaps an equally significant moral issue is the weaponization of the Department of Justice to whether there's a case here or not. I think that is a significant concern. Whether Don Lemon was with them, it's the continued erosion of independent journalism and the continued seeming weaponization of the Department of Justice that has shined a brighter light on this particular situation.
Great discussion. And your point about the ICE agent was a follow-up question I had with regards to when you have someone in a role as an associate pastor and there is a controversial public, how do you respond to that? But I think we covered it well, and you brought it up, and I want to move on to the Super Bowl because it's Super Bowl Sunday.
Nothing controversial there.
No, especially with the Pope involved. So we turn now to the event of the day. Super Bowl 60 is being played. Did you know the last 3 times a new Pope was chosen, the Seattle Seahawks made it to the Super Bowl? Check it out.
And
In 2005, the Catholic Church elected a new pope. Pope Benedict XVI became the new Holy Father in April of that year. That same year, the Seattle Seahawks won 13 games that season. It was the first time that had ever happened in franchise history, and they advanced to their first Super Bowl. Flash forward to 2013. The next pope was elected, Pope Francis. And wouldn't you know it, the Seahawks also won 13 games that year and made their, you guessed it, second Super Bowl appearance. They won, by the way. Great game. Totally destroyed the Broncos. Now here we are in 2025. You see where this is going? And we just got a new pope elected to lead the Catholic Church, Pope Leo. 3 separate years, 3 different popes. And what just happened? The Seattle Seahawks won their 13th game of the season, 3rd time in franchise history. What do you think will happen next?
So I think inquiring minds all want to know your Super Bowl picks, and I think, Father John, we might know yours based off of that, but who knows? So what do we make of, I mean, that's just kind of a cool connection. And
I want to also say that Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers, which is my husband's favorite team, I mean, he grew up way further north, but that was the closest professional football team that there was. Every time Toyotathon came on, Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers won. And to the point where it was crazy. I mean, I think he did a commercial with Toyotathon and everything. So I'm not.
well, they're not playing this year.
No,
So
no,
you got Seattle or New
believe
England.
me, I know. And being a Boston girl, guess who I'm rooting for? But I'm just saying that, you know, not to discredit the Pope or not to not give the Pope all credit due. These things just kind of do happen. So that was my only point.
So you're going with New England? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to write this down. Keep
Oh, okay.
I think the Seahawks will win.
Unfortunately, so do I.
And I think I will be cheering for the Seahawks because once more my Cincinnati Bengals kind of floundered during this past season. So I don't really have a dog in this hunt, so to speak. But I guess I'm calling a Seahawks victory and will be cheering for them somewhat.
I only started watching football when Lamar Jackson became the quarterback. So I followed the Ravens, and now that the Ravens aren't in it, I really don't care. I'm still rooting for Lamar for next year, just because I think he's such a fascinating player, and I don't think anybody else holds a candle to him. So there we go.
But you didn't pick.
No, I don't have a pick.
And being a Catholic priest, some would think that I would know like a lot of Catholic trivia, and I don't. And so I didn't know this at all. And so then I wonder, you know, when the cardinals then go into consistory, when they go in to vote, and they go in and they go in prayer, if they're like praying for the Seahawks when they go, and then also the present pope, he's from Chicago, so you would think it would be the Bears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's not. So, but I'll go for the Seahawks.
But they did have a good run this year, so he had
Yeah.
some pull, I think.
But I'll go for the Seahawks on this one.
Wow. So, I don't really have a dog in the fight, kind of like you. I'm not sure, but I feel like I should say the Patriots just because nobody else has said them, right? Well, you were there. So we're bookending, right?
I remember when it was the Boston Patriots, not the New England Patriots. That's
Okay.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But you know, it's not like it's the Red Sox or anything. Who am I
Isn't
adore?
it more intriguing how somebody like actually figured that out? You know, whose brain
know who
thinks in
did
such a
that.
way to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
you know, when all of that matches up?
Yeah.
I don't think that way.
I think a computer figured it out.
Yeah, I'm curious with the halftime program. I want to see what Bad Bunny's going to do. I think that's going to be my main interest.
You want to segue into that?
I don't think we have time. We've got 4
Okay.
minutes left.
Okay.
But we need a pick from you because now it's 2 and 2. We got two New England and 2 Seattle. So
Flip a coin.
You're in the middle. You gotta,
I've got to pick
The
one or the
peacemaker.
other.
Were you a middle child?
if you like
Yes.
if you like the Ravens,
Yes,
we'll go with the AFC team for you.
Which
New
one is that? Oh, New England, that
Which
one.
one
Okay,
is
that? Yeah. See, I told you.
Yeah.
There's very little I know about football because I think it's a pretty aggressive sport.
Yeah, I don't like football. It's too
I mean,
violent.
it's,
and those new
yeah.
helmets that were supposed to, you know, concussion protocols and whatever. Apparently, they don't do anything, and they're making lots of money now selling them to parents for their kids. What wouldn't you spend to protect your child in high school or whatever, but unfortunately.
Being a good Hoosier boy from the other side of the river as opposed to everybody here, I would rather have the conversation go to how the Hoosiers did
Let's talk
in
about
their
it.
last bowl game, right?
That was
So I
exciting.
do have a prediction about that. I think there's going to be, we've all seen the movie Hoosiers, right? That was about basketball. I'm waiting for the Hoosiers 2.0 football edition, because what an amazing story, right? What an amazing story to have our Hoosiers come out so well. So.
I don't think we have time to play the clip, but there's a great angle to that story as well with their Mendoza, who won the Heisman Trophy and the national championship, and his very outwardness of talking about his faith.
Yes.
At every point, he talked about his Catholicism and his faith, and he took the Heisman Trophy to the rectory on Christmas Eve to share it with his priest. So there's just, we tried to get to this topic a couple times last year with the increase in faith in sports.
We did.
And I don't know if we ever got
that. Oh, yeah.
I think we got a little bit.
But it's amazing to see over the past couple of years the increase in that, I think.
And I remember what I said because, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but athletes are among the most superstitious, like you don't change your underwear if you're on a winning streak, that level of superstitious, and also the most religious, and I think that's great. My concern is that when you look at the statistics of the younger generations, the largest group of them are the nuns, meaning no religion, I have none, and that's what we need to work on. It's not the athletic heroes. It's just your ordinary kid who goes off to college or whatever. We're failing at that. Maybe a D.
Thanks for a great conversation today. We'll wrap it up with that. I think the panel has mostly picked New England, maybe. So
You didn't tell us what you were doing.
Oh yeah, I'm going to the Seahawks. So now we're tied.
Now we're tied.
We're
I
tied
gotta go with
again,
the
so
Pope
I didn't
connection.
bring a tie.
So thanks to our panel today, Reverend Dr. George Washington, Faith Point Church, Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church, Reverend Sally McLean, Christian Church Disciples of Christ, Reverend Jason Crosby, Center College, and Rabbi Emerita Galia R. Rooks with the Temple. Thanks for watching this week, and we do want to promote our ticket raffle giveaway. It's your chance to win an unforgettable Derby Week experience while supporting children across Kentucky and Southern Indiana, which this panel, the advisory panel for the Crusade for Children. You can enter now at WHS Crusade for Children website or scan the QR code on the screen. First place prize is a premium all-inclusive Kentucky Derby package for 6. The second place prize is Kentucky Derby experience for 6 with a $1,200 cash as well for your betting, and 2 Frank Olive Fascinators. And third place prize is a GE Opal Nugget Ice Maker and a $1,000 Meyer gift card. The drawing will be held on Thursday, April 16th. You do not need to be present to win. You must be 21 to enter, and terms and conditions apply. They're on our website. Void where prohibited. See the full website for details. Thank you. Have a great day and a great Super Bowl Sunday.